Hi, Michael.
Hey Gail, how you doing?
Okay, okay.
Good.
Hi, Nate.
Hello.
Hey Nate. Yeah, we can't see you yet.
Because I didn't hit that yet.
Nate, you have another fun shirt on this time.
Oh yeah, it's some kind of bubbles, very effervescent.
Love it.
Gentlemen, in the minutes for last meeting, at
Yes.
the very end was something about our going to the select board with a request to complete the Green Communities Report. Does that make sense to you?
I was confused, but I just thought I forgot something.
Because I could have sworn that at the beginning of the meeting, I reported that, yes, DOER had received Becky's Green Communities Report and accepted it, and that, yes, because of that, we were eligible to apply for grants. And I'm wondering if that vote at the end was something about maybe asking the select board permission or whatever, or telling them that we were going to apply for grants.
I don't remember, but why don't we wait and, I mean, Zoe's coming, but we
There's
can,
Zoe, good, okay, she'll have the answer.
we can just wait till we start and then we can all
Yep.
see what we think. And hey Zoe,
Hello.
Hi, Zoe.
Hi.
how you doing?
I'm doing very well.
Good.
I see windows open. It is that kind of weather. So nice.
Yeah, my mom is like, she loves storms and she's like sitting outside with her glass of wine and like her computer and she's like watching the whole thing come across the pasture.
Oh, nice.
That's
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. Summer storms are fun.
Yeah.
Why does she have your computer though?
She's a risk taker, that one.
Zap. We do need the rain.
I know, don't I know it? Oh my gosh.
So I know that Graham can't come because he had a conflict. And I'm guessing Miriam will come. Oh, there they are.
Graham was going to take minutes tonight, right?
No, Nate is.
Nate.
Yeah,
Okay. Graham's next, and then me. Okay. Hi, Henry. Hi, Miriam.
Are you?
You're at home.
Yes.
Yay.
She's been on for a while. So Gail, I thought you were next for minutes. In the cycle. I wrote down the cycle so I wouldn't forget. I think you are, then
Oh.
Graham's after you.
Okay.
That I'm up for minutes tonight?
Nope.
No. You're on deck.
Nate is. Okay.
yep, I got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see.
And then I'm next after Nate?
Yeah.
Okay.
So all we're missing is Leslie. Why don't we give her a minute or two?
Hi, Henry.
Hey, Henry. And Leslie was down for the count because she might have Lyme, so
Oh,
Oh, no.
yuck.
we'll see if she,
Oh,
give her a couple
bad,
of minutes.
bad.
Yeah.
So I have good news. They took out my oil tank yesterday.
Yay.
I have no fossil fuels in the house now.
Very good. Congrats. You can adjust your halo.
Did they have, was it a flatbed? What'd they put it on?
They had this, they did a crazy thing. They went in and they sucked all the oil out and then they wiped it down and cut it up in pieces.
Wow.
Took it out in pieces. I thought they could have just carried it out through the bulkhead because it was brought in that way. We replaced it a few years ago. They just carried it in there, but
So what are you doing instead?
mini splits, whole house mini splits, every room.
Wow.
Our ducts would not accommodate anything else. So,
Geothermal.
yeah, but it has to be ducted.
I thought you said you had ducts.
Yeah, but our ducts were crappy, so we're
Oh.
continuing the
Okay.
ducts.
Non-crappy ducts. Okay.
Here I am thinking that you also have ducks.
right?
I was like, your ducks get a special air conditioned room in the house.
In bad shape though.
And they're in my basement.
Right.
As long as there's water down there,
Yep, there is.
they'll like it.
I have hedgehogs and mice.
Yeah, the ducks have better accommodations than the chickens. They just have like, unaerated coop. So Leslie is here.
There's Leslie, yay.
So why don't I call us to order? It's 7:03. So I'll go over the minutes and the big change, and I'm glad Henry's here. I have to apologize because what we were supposed to do, I was supposed to do last meeting or after last meeting was connect with Henry to figure out when he was going to present to us about sustainability. And I totally neglected to do that. So I'm assuming, Henry, that you're not ready to do that because we didn't talk, right?
Well, I could talk about some things. There's always something to say.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm fine with waiting. I just didn't.
Okay, why don't we do that? I do have something, but it's sort of off the cuff, and
Yeah, why don't you and me can just figure out, I sent you an email earlier today when I realized I screwed up. So if we find a time you and I can talk, and then we'll just put it on the agenda for next time. If that sounds good. So,
that sounds like a plan.
okay, my apologies to you and everyone for spacing. And then I think the only other adjustments, that'll take out a chunk of stuff in our agenda, but there's a couple of other things I wanted to add in based on some communication I had. One was about the ARPA recommendations. And the other was just a quick update about our meeting status, given the COVID regulations may be changing or not changing. So it's mostly an FYI. But if that sounds good, we can proceed. Hi, Leslie.
Hi.
How are you feeling?
It's confirmed I have Lyme, so,
Oh,
Oh, no.
So you're on
I'm-
antibiotics?
well, I just took the first one today, but I've been on herbal tincture antibiotics, and that's how I knew it was Lyme, because I started feeling better. So I'm doing both.
wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that stinks, and that's good that you're feeling better.
Got
Yeah,
a speed.
thank you. Thank you. Yeah,
And a relative visiting from Colorado yesterday, I guess it was yesterday. And they don't have ticks out there. It's just amazing. I mean,
Wow.
they have wildfires and hundreds
Yeah,
of heat,
honestly, yeah, really.
but no ticks. So looking around, I don't see any public comment except for Henry. Henry, you're like our token public. Do you have any comments you want to share?
No, I do want to share something with the group, because I came onto something that might open some ideas up for you as a group and this committee. So we could do
We'll do it now, or
We did
Go
now
for
or
it.
later. It may take a few minutes to do.
that's okay. Go for it. You got some
Okay.
time.
Right. One of the things, of course, communication, everybody communicates. And we all figure, the more information we get out there, the better. And of course, when it comes to communicating science, this is not necessarily the case. There are just lots of issues that make it so scientists and academics that generate this information really don't have communication skills. And we can talk about communication strategies, ways of actually doing this kind of thing, but I think there's a bigger picture, and it's more institutional and historical in nature. To try and understand how we conceive of this, of your work as a commission, as a way of communicating the results or the idea of your work within the town, but also beyond. What's interesting, and what occurred to me is that one of the key questions here is the idea that we have a lot of received concepts about sustainability, about there are any number of concepts here: ecology, ecological, green, etc., that are being abused in multiple ways. Major corporations use these concepts constantly. We're under a barrage of these concepts. Where did they come from? So that is what I want to address very quickly. If you give me the screen, I will share with you some ideas.
I think you should be able to do it now.
Okay. All right. All right. Let's see. You see my
Yes.
my.
Yes.
So to start with, I differentiate between a dominant paradigm versus an environmental paradigm. It's just a very general set of categories. Different ways of thinking about this that have a place in history and in the institutions that deal with the environment. Dominant social paradigm, which says, humans dominate, have rights, they set the standard of value. Growth is synonymous with progress. Nature is a resource, self-interest, conservative ideology. These are things that pervade the dominant paradigm. Segmentation, right? So the economy is this separate entity. You got society, culture, and you got the environment. They're separate things. You look at the newspaper; they treat them separately. Your commission, it's separate from. Even though you have a planning board member, it's separate from planning board, from the conservation commission, from various other committees in town. It's a very powerful kind of thing. It pervades academia and even science, right? People they're in their silos. The environmental paradigm, on the other hand, is a different way of looking at things, where humans and nature are interdependent, right? One of many species, sustainability and conservation over growth. All species have rights. These are very familiar notions if you look into this at all. So there's a lot of diversity here: complexity, harmony, stability, the collective, community good. It's more of a liberal, politically speaking. Already we're talking about divisions, yes, that make their way into history and institutions. Environmental paradigm tends to look at things more systemically. Right, so the economy, society, environment, as general categories, are integrated. They're viewed as interrelated. So historically, before the 60s, the dominant paradigm reigned supreme. You couldn't argue otherwise. And it was really when Rachel Carson came along and challenged the use of pesticides that you had in the 60s, the emergence of an environmental paradigm. The EPA was created under Richard Nixon. Brundtland report came out in 1987 through non-governmental organizations. And they defined sustainability. This was the first time it was really sort of coined and institutionalized into policies, particularly through the UN system. So the UN has been carrying this flag along with other NGOs and governments. Meantime, conservative think tanks and politics emerged precisely in the 1980s. where environmentalism is labeled radical activism. In essence, neoliberalism as a way of organizing the economy and society take hold in the 1980s. Free markets, deregulation. Let's get we know that story. Supreme Court tells it all, right? So I guess what I'm trying to get at here is that there are these paradigms, and they're pervasive, they're historical, they're institutionalized, and in essence, they have different vocabularies. Yeah, and this is very broad strokes. And for some of you, this may be redundant, but what's curious then is to look at, let's say, for example, how the UN has defined this idea of sustainability, just to give you an idea. Let me see here. One more thing I wanted to share with you. Where are we? One second. Get out of there. All right. I know you're all, probably don't want to be listening to me talk all the time. I'm going to play a short clip just to give you an idea here. Can everybody see the clip?
No.
I'm in YouTube, yes.
Nope.
Right. So this is what the UN comes up with. And there's a reason for this, because the what's called sustainability development goals have been defined by the UN, again, historically, going back to the 80s. And these sets of goals have been adopted by countries, and they've been adopted by cities. And so I just want to share this, just very, it's 3 or 4 minutes of a clip here.
Henry, we can't see it.
Can't see it, okay. All right. Let's try that again. It's been a while since I've done this, actually. Yeah.
Usually what you choose is
Yeah,
your
no,
browser. Okay.
Yes, I know exactly. Can you see it now?
Yep.
Yes.
Good.
It's not on though.
No, here we go.
6.5 minutes.
I can't hear anything.
Yeah, is there sound, Henry?
Yeah. Hold on one second. We're going to optimize it for sharing video. Okay.
Henry, is the whole 6 minutes important, or could we do a little bit less?
It's half the time, 3 minutes.
Okay.
Set up 17 Sustainable Development Goals, also SDGs, that were adopted by 193 countries. And our mission is to
Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Good.
achieve these goals by 2030. In this video, we are going to talk about the SDG wedding cake and 2 other interesting ways you can use these goals to see if your country or your business is sustainable. Okay, let's get drawing. On this channel, we share tools to help you change the world, so subscribe if that's of interest to you. To be totally honest, the problem with these 17 goals is that, well, there are 17 of them, which can make them look complicated and not easy to remember. But the good thing about them is that they are the result of many public consultations, and they provide a shared language for all countries to report on. They also cover a lot of important things, and they can tell us if we are becoming sustainable. Or do they? First, let's look at how they are interconnected instead of looking at them individually. The Stockholm Resilience Center suggested organizing the SDGs into 3 layers. The environment as the foundation, supporting society, which supports the economy. This is like the triple bottom line, or the 3 pillars of sustainability that I presented in another video. I put a link in the description below. Essentially, sustainability is about meeting human needs within ecological constraints, and the economy is a strategy to make money while achieving sustainability. There are 4 goals about the environment: clean water, climate action, life on land, and life below water. 8 goals are about society: no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, affordable and clean energy, sustainable cities and communities, and peace, justice, and strong institutions. And these 4 goals are about the economy: decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, reduced inequalities, responsible consumption and production. They call this representation the SDG wedding cake. In other words, we can't achieve decent economic growth or even food security without first taking care of our oceans, as was demonstrated in Newfoundland during the collapse of the Atlantic cod fisheries in the 1990s. And, to use the more recent example of the coronavirus crisis, we can't have everybody in good health and achieve no poverty without taking care first of our land, forests, and our greenhouse gas emissions. My video on coronavirus explains this in more details. With the 17 goals come targets and indicators. I am not going to bore you with all the 169 targets and 232 indicators, but if we look at the affordable and clean energy goal as an example, it has 5 associated targets which read like this. By 2030, ensure universal access to affordable, reliable, and modern energy services. By 2030, increase substantially the share of renewable energy in the global energy mix. By 2030, double the global rate of improvement in energy efficiency, etc. And we can look at the performance of each country by indicator on this website. It looks like this for the United States, for instance. If a country is doing well on the SDGs, does that mean that they are more sustainable? Let's look at the top of the list. All these European countries are doing really well on poverty, health, education, etc. But they also have some of the largest ecological footprints per capita in the world. Although it is interesting to look at each individual target and indicator to see how a country is doing on individual goals, looking at the aggregate score of a country can be misleading, as developed countries look better as a whole but tend to use a lot more resources and contribute more to climate change. To break down sustainable development into all its dimensions, these 17 goals are great. But if you're trying to make a plan for a country to become sustainable, I would recommend using these first-order principles for sustainability that are grounded in science: 3 ecological ones and 5 social ones. They're necessary, sufficient, and non-overlapping. Once we comply with these principles, we are truly sustainable. I included the video link in the description below. If you
Okay. So anyway, what's interesting about this is that major cities in the United States have actually signed on to the Sustainable Development Goals. It's a voluntary thing where the cities track their metrics of energy use, a whole gamut of, aspects of sustainability. And I'm talking about, of course, New York City, Los Angeles, Pittsburgh, and Lenox, Massachusetts. Believe it or not. But it is, the point of this is also that, by institutionalizing something like this, you see, it's a form of you're communicating something. You're saying this is serious. The authorities take it seriously. We have, and also it makes it possible to compare with other towns or regions or parts of the world. And I guess lastly, that there are resources here available, some of them for free, through universities, think tanks that support this kind of thing. For instance, at Lenox, they signed on with some with academics and students to do an assessment of their sustainability development goals. It was for free, and I know that the town hired or had a grant for this to be done here. Isn't that the case, right? I remember seeing results being reported on it.
I don't think so. At least not that I'm aware of. But.
Oh, well, they didn't precisely frame it this way, obviously. But this is just another way of doing it. They hired folks to do an assessment of the key, I guess, environmental and hazard issues.
Right.
In
The hazard mitigation plan and the prevention of vulnerability. Yeah, that we did. So Henry, I'm gonna just wrap us up a bit, but can you send us a link to some of the resources? Just
Sure.
The ECAC, so because I think it'd be worth following up and sort of, if we look at it, to sort of have some conversation, because I think it's
just
a good introduction, but we can dig deep into it.
Yeah, no, just as a final point, I mean, the point is this: sustainability is it has no meaning unless you define it. The UN has a definition. You see that, and it has a way of measuring it, etc. So that's the beauty of this, and I think that that's central to any communication strategy from the beginning. Defining the terms.
Anyone have any questions briefly before we sort of move on? Because I think we should circle back on this once Henry shares the resources, but any thoughts or comments? Leslie?
Yeah, thanks, Henry. That was a beautiful presentation to kind of say, we got to get more specific. And throwing around the words just doesn't make any action generally. So that's really.
Yeah, they come across as jargon in part also because people no longer, they don't resonate with people anymore. You know, the advertising for corporation is saying the same thing.
Right.
Everybody's sustainable. Everybody's ecological. So it's important in that sense.
Well, thank you, Henry. And I didn't realize you were going to do a whole thing. I would have sort of. This was not off the cuff. You did a good job.
Believe me,
you organized it. So anyway, thank you.
Yeah.
So
to be continued. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So I'll move us on to something a little bit more practical and limited, which is minutes. So Leslie let me know that she wasn't able to work on the May 31st, given what's going on health-wise. So we're gonna wait a month on that one. But Zoe did send out the June 21st minutes. Thank you, Zoe. So if I can get a motion to approve the minutes, just a reminder, what we do is we move to approve and second, and then we discuss. So, Gail, you're moving to approve the minutes?
Oh.
No, it just means starting
I had a
conversation.
I had a
Oh
question.
no, we have to just, if we move to approve it and then we second it, then we have the discussion. So, and let's, thank you, Leslie. So a second? I'll second it. Okay, okay, Gail, discussion, question.
Well done, Zoe. That was good. I didn't understand the reference at the end, though, about taking a vote to send the Green Communities report to the select board. And I don't know if I didn't remember correctly or if I was asleep at that point or what, but I remember I thought that earlier in the meeting I had reported that Becky had indeed completed the Green Communities report and sent it into DOER, which accepted it, which made us eligible then to apply for grants in the fall. And I don't know how that relates to the question of a vote.
Yeah, that is probably me working from the draft of the last minutes that I did and not removing that section.
Okay.
Thank you
right.
for reading the
Oh,
very.
that, okay, because we
Sorry
did
about
at that point. Yes, okay.
Yes.
Cool.
I'd like
Okay.
to make a request when people send out draft minutes, if people could send them in a Word doc rather than a PDF, so that if we want to write comments or corrections, I don't have to convert it.
Yeah, I had suggested that as well. It just makes it easier. And that the final should be a PDF, but I think the draft would be good. And Zoe, did you see my other comment just about the prior vote? Where Gail moved to proceed to presenting the CCA? It just has to reflect the roll call vote since we're doing it online.
It has to reflect the roll call vote.
Where Zoe says aye, and Nate says aye, and Michael says aye, and Miriam says aye. So you have to identify everybody in their vote.
Okay, and there's a place where I didn't identify everybody.
Yeah, you just said
When-
all, you said
I'll
all
say
say
aye.
aye.
Got
Right.
it. Okay,
Yeah.
yes, I will fix that.
I'll say aye by roll call if you want.
Okay,
That's easier.
can I say that? I'll say aye.
I've never heard you could do that. I thought we had to identify all the individuals. So one chair gets another chair. So,
Yeah, we say everybody, but
I'll
I
just,
like the short and simple.
yeah, do it the other way, just because who knows? We might not have to do this very much longer anyway. And, so are people good with the suggested amendments of adding the roll call and striking that last part? Do we want to vote to approve the minutes as amended? So, Nate, what's your vote?
Aye.
Gail,
Aye.
Miriam,
aye.
Leslie,
Aye.
Zoe,
I,
and I'm an aye. Okay. So the minutes are approved, and thank you again for doing them. So let's see. So we've got a whole bunch of updates and discussion points. What I was going to suggest, if we can take Nate's review of the hazard mitigation and municipal vulnerability and put it at the end, because that might be a little bit of a longer conversation. If that's cool. So Gail, do you want to just give us an update about the energy audit?
The tabulation that I presented at the last meeting has changed only in a couple of tweaks to format, really.
Yeah.
And the narrative was sent out to a town announce to the email folks of the survey. Michael put it on next door Shutesbury and eCricket too. Did you
Yeah.
put it on eCricket? Which basically laid out just a narrative form so people didn't have to read through the chart, but with a reference to the chart online if they want to go through the details. So they should get it every which way. So
And the select board has got it.
Yep.
And, so I was actually talking about the Mass Save audit, but that's another update, because you contacted the Mass Save people, right?
You're talking about the survey,
Well, Gail was just talking about the survey. I
right?
was talking about the National Grid Mass Save audit. Didn't,
For
you know how
town.
you know how you reached out to National Grid?
I did.
Yeah, so did you want to just share with what they were?
Oh, we're running a calendar next week. The auditor should be here to go through the municipal buildings. Is that what you want?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, sorry. It was scheduled for this week. They had to change plans, and Becky and the vendor that National Grid recommended are coming through with a new schedule for next week. And the vendor will come through all 5 of the municipal buildings and take photos and check rooms and go through preliminary audit.
And do they then create like a report to submit to the town?
They will send back somebody to make real adjustments and real real analysis of what they find. But they'll also be looking at what has been posted on the Mass Energy Insight. I still do not have access to that.
And do
Working
you
on
know, and would they finally submit? Do you have a
They will-
sense that?
They will submit a final report, yes.
Okay,
And the
we'll get
report
one?
will have recommendations on what we could do to increase efficiency, decrease use, et cetera. So, I mean, that basically walks us into what we would apply for grant funding in the fall. Funding to do these things that they say we should do.
Cool, that's great. Thank you for doing that.
Is this going to include the school as well?
Yes,
Great.
school, fire department, highway department, town hall, and the MSN Spear Library.
And is the primary contact you or Becky? for
Becky,
that? Okay, but she knows you want this, you want to see the report?
I got it scheduled, and then she's the one who takes the vendor around to all the sites. She has access to all these sites.
Yeah,
And as she did before in 2011, she actually stays put with him as they make the visits.
cool, great, thank you. And just on the energy survey, I want to thank you again for doing all that work. It was,
You're welcome. We learned a lot.
yeah. I got at least one thank you email, and I gave you full credit. And but they said they're appreciative. And then I guess the last update before we get to the well, there's community choice aggregation. I can give a report back on that. So the select board didn't have a full conversation about it, but what they would like to discuss it next Tuesday at their meeting. So I wanted to check, Nate, if you'd be up for attending that meeting, maybe doing your little PowerPoint presentation, and I'll join you, of course. But I don't have a time. Rita asked Becky to put it on the agenda, so we can follow up. Gail?
So we'll be presenting our request to be on this, whenever the special meeting is, to have a vote on aggregation.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I think what next week would be is to present the concept of community choice aggregation with the recommendation that we made, that it goes on the warrant. Rita also told me, last week, Rita was saying that she thought special town meeting would be late September, early October. In today's email, she said it seems like early winter, so.
Early,
Winter. So I don't quite know what early winter is, if that's December or, November, but
still beats next May.
yes, exactly. So, but I think the sooner we get things going, it gives us a little more time in terms of the public engagement. But, what I had suggested, Nate, was that they, if they give us 20 minutes, you can do a presentation and then we can have Q&A. It all depends on how busy they are, but once I hear back, I think, did I CC you on that email?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So hopefully they'll CC us, Becky will CC back with some information, but that would be great, just to get on the dance card and sort of push the idea forward a little bit. And then the last update before we get into the hazard mitigation is with the community solar. And Leslie and Marianne and I had a little bit of an email exchange. Marianne's first communication was that she didn't want to do a whole big proposal of what co-op power could do for the town and then present it to the select board, with the idea being that the select board could say yes or no. And so what I suggested in response that I think she's good with is that what we need as a committee is to understand what the factors are. So she was saying, why don't we, the committee, think about smaller places in town where we can do community solar or muni solar projects. So, the school, town hall, fire department, that kind of stuff. And so my thought was, what we need is enough information to figure out what are the factors that would say, let's do the school versus town hall or the fire department. So she's going to get back to us, both logistical things, financial scenarios, et cetera, so that we can have some conversation amongst ourselves about, how that might look. And then she's willing to come back once we've had that conversation. But does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Cool, great. So we shall see. I'm guessing it won't be too long until she gets that to us and we can put it on the agenda and have a conversation. So that's the feedback on that. So I think, Nate, you want to take us through your spreadsheet a little bit?
Sure, I'm happy to call it up. So I'm a little flat-footed because I'm also.
I've got it too if you want.
Let's see. So I do have it right here. Okay. Okay. So this is the Excel file that I circulated maybe late last week. I'm really losing track of time these days, but the content really is just the information that I'd organized in the PowerPoint presentations, but in this sort of structured form, if you will. So first column being the source, whether it's the hazard mitigation plan, or if it's the vulnerability plan. And there are in both of the reports large tabular presentations of this information as well, but in a PDF it's might be a little cumbersome to navigate. And then what I was trying to do with this spreadsheet is much in the same way as I was trying to tackle this through sort of the presentations to ECAC is what's the energy and or climate lens on the various proposals that are contained in those reports. So by sort of, there aren't that many rows to this spreadsheet, but hopefully it's a helpful way for committee members to review the material, digest it, and perhaps I think the objective is to much in the same way as we were talking at the beginning of our meeting today with Henry's points about putting some detail, putting something concrete together, and organizing our work in relation to a specific set of concrete objectives. This is maybe part of that that work for us. So yeah, that's what I was hoping to do with this spreadsheet.
Well, I'll tell you, the reason I wanted to put it at the end is because I found it really helpful. And what struck me, and I think I've mentioned this before, but I think we've talked about it generally, is how do we advance some of this work? So identifying it and organizing it the way you did is helpful. What I wanted to throw out was, it seemed like it might be appropriate for each of us to, either one or two of us, to be a liaison to different committees. So for example, I thought, I'm on planning board, and there's a variety of things here that are planning board. And so to be able to go to the planning board, get on the agenda with ECAC items and say, these are the things that got raised in hazard mitigation and municipal vulnerability plans. And how can we advance it? One, just to sort of put it in front of them for awareness sake, because although I know I've personally talked about the MVP a lot, I'm sure, it's been forgotten among other things. But there's other bodies in town where I'm sure the discussion has not happened. So emergency management, they might have been solicited at the beginning of the MVP process, but whether or not they're thinking about that, the other one, which is not on the list that I thought, I started making a list of like, what are the committees or entities in town that we would want to engage? One of them is capital planning, which in terms of whether it's chargers or, there was the article I sent out, I think it was last week, where there was a change in policy about buying hybrid vehicles. So I was thinking, I'm curious what you all think about if we wanted to sort of take on one or two committees, whether on our own or shared, and use this as a way of engaging people. Gail?
I'd also like to add a column for the open space plan, because several of these projects are specified in the open space plan. So that would give us an initial introduction to the open space committee as overseeing a coordination of any given project among planning board, open space, East, CAC, whatever. Would that be okay with you, Nate, if I were to throw in another column?
Yeah.
I think
And
that
in the
makes
open
sense.
space plan, it's a coordination. Here are these projects, and it itemizes which committees are interested in that particular item. So that might do some of the homework of dividing up or assigning committee interests or committee liaison.
And Gail, you would just use the same kind of filter that, although the open space plan might have a lot of stuff, it would sort of be focused on the energy and climate related components of it.
Yeah, I'd go with these particular things,
Oh, okay.
not
Okay.
add other things. Yep.
Oh,
So which
okay.
of these things are already in the open space plan, and what committees are already targeted in the open space plan for dealing with this particular project?
Got it.
How about the
Miriam.
master plan?
Which one?
How about the master plan?
Well, the master
Way
plan,
old.
yeah, that's one of the big projects. I mean, I actually put that on the MVP list during the process, and it's there. It's just such a heavy lift, and it's been, I know we've been intentionally not even talked about it because we've been waiting for the solar projects to come forward, and we thought we couldn't do both. So we didn't want to start with the big master plan project, but it's on the to-do list for sure. And one could do it in pieces. There's some tasks in here that are identified in terms of looking at regulations, like for shared driveways. So that's not the whole kit and caboodle of the master plan, but there's little pieces and it's looking at regulations. But it seems like this is actually, I mean, my take on this was having it laid out this way sort of gives us a digestible roadmap.
Right.
Nate, to your point, we're not looking at a PDF that has a whole long thing. And if we use this and, just say, for example, which makes sense, I was the planning board liaison, that starting in the fall, I could go forth and talk to the planning board and then report back to ECAC, and just sort of each of us could take on whatever liaison role we want and sort of check in with them, keep them, make them aware and then check in, that kind of thing. Yeah. And
as an Excel spreadsheet, we can sort this by priorities, by committees, by topic, for an instant translation, if you will, of our trajectory.
Yeah, and I think make it digestible. So, we don't even have to share with the committee the whole list, just sort of the things that are pertinent. Nate, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say I've got 2 kids at the elementary school. So unless other people are interested in engaging the school committee, it might be a natural one for me to
Cool. That sounds great.
engage.
Okay. And do folks want to take a minute and see if there's logical committees or bodies that someone wants to be a liaison for? You want to just give it some thought? I mean, there's emergency management, the school committee, there's capital planning, highway department. I do have a question, Miriam, that you might know the answer to.
And I will volunteer to do the Concom, obviously.
Yeah. Do we currently have a tree warden or no?
Yes,
We do. He got
Who is
reappointed.
it?
Well, in the end of June, Don didn't get reappointed, right?
he was reappointed at the last select board meeting.
He
Oh, great.
was. Yay.
Great. Okay.
As far as I know, he still has not been paid in 2.5 years, so I don't, I don't know if he wants to keep the position.
Well-
But he's not paid a salary. He gets paid, never mind. It's a different issue.
Yeah, no, he gets something every year and has not gotten it in 2.5 years.
Okay. Well, as long as he's got the
Anyway.
position, that's a good,
That's not-
then we can liaise with him.
Right.
Otherwise, there's no one there, which is problematic. I also, the other ones I came up with, there's one about the library, which I think which is for the cooling shelter, which could be the library, it could be emergency management. There's working with Becky as town administrator for some things like acquiring electrical vehicle chargers. And there's some that I think we would own. Like when I was looking at the idea of supporting incentives to allow individual homeowners to have self-sufficiency off the grid solar. I'm not quite sure what kind of incentives that would be, but it might start with us to sort of do the research and then figure out where it
Develop,
lands. So, well, how about this? I actually, if you don't mind, Nate, I sort of took this stuff, reorganized it and did a little bit of filling in of some of the committees that were missing. But if I share this out with everybody and take a look at it, then Gail, you can add on to it the way you were going to talk about
Okay.
open space. And then if people want to just think about, who wants to be a liaison to who. I don't think it's a heavy lift. I think it's mostly getting in front of them and sharing the information and getting on their agenda if they do have agendas. It could just be.
Michael, do you have LWAC on here?
No, it's not on here. Is there an LWAC?
Well,
I'm just working. I mean,
infrastructure.
yeah, it's sort of informed by these tasks.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's that sort of raises another question, which is there's other bodies in town which should be thinking about stuff that they can do, but it seems like that's a phase 2 where we can go broader. But nothing in here talks about Lake Wayola.
But LWAC has interest in several of the open space projects.
Well, I'm just thinking about like in terms of critical infrastructure, like the dam.
Right. But that wouldn't fall under ECAC. It would fall under open space, I suspect.
So we're generating energy from the dam. So,
There you
which is that's an interesting idea.
Yes.
So if that makes sense, I'll just share it around and then we can figure out who wants to do what. But I'm happy to do the planning board, and I think Nate, you might not have competition for the school committee. So
Sounds good.
Would that just look like showing up at a meeting and drawing attention to one of these points?
yeah, I think it would be the way I would imagine doing it is, if it's a committee, finding out who the chair is, contacting them, whether by email or phone, and sort of giving them the spiel of like, this is what ECAC's about. Your committee got identified in relation to this topic. Can I get on your agenda? And then going to the meeting and, just sort of speaking, as you just described, sort of getting in front of them and describing it. And I think we could talk a little bit about strategy, but it probably depends. Some of these things are very short, some of these things are very long, and some involve funding and some don't. So each project will probably have a different time frame and complexity, but I don't think we're not responsible for it. It's mostly giving them the heads up and making them aware that this falls into their lap. And given that we've been charged to follow up on the hazard mitigation and municipal vulnerability, we sort of want to get in front of them and let them know that this makes sense for them to do. And we'll check back when whatever the appropriate time is, but to try to just, give them a little nudge.
Wouldn't we want to get a commitment though from the committee that they want to take it on?
I think that would be the goal. It's a dance, since we don't really have power or leverage, it's figuring out, so using the example with master plan for planning board, there's no way that I can imagine the planning board saying, woohoo, we're going to do the master plan this year, but they might look at shared driveways. And they might, and I think what I would propose, just using that as an example, is let's find a time in the next year where we start working on the master plan. Because we can't just hold our breath for the solar projects for multiple years on end. We actually have to do this stuff.
And
Or is there?
who should be involved and rope them in?
Yeah. And some of these, some of them are very discreet, so like the energy, the chargers, that's really discreet. That's sort of talking to, to Becky. The other one I thought about, for example, which is discreet, is the creating the climate mitigation and adaptation fund, which is the select board and the FinCom. So actually, I got another thought I have to share with you, but once they're aware of it, they just have to make a decision, figure out the mechanics of how they create, whether it's going to be a fund and how they fund it and how much. But so some of them are easy, but until we ask and make them aware of it, no one's going to do this stuff. I think it's the big point. So I do appreciate it. The thing I remembered next week with the select board, the other thing we need to talk about in the agenda just in a moment or two is about the ARPA stuff, the ARPA recommendations. So I'll get to that in a minute, but are we good with this? I don't want to beat it to death, but this makes sense, right?
Yep.
Cool.
Thank you, Nate, for getting this organized this way. This is great.
Yeah, it's really helpful. So one little thing, and then we can get into the ARPA funding. And Miriam, you might know some of this too, but I spoke with Grace, our town clerk, yesterday, and she gave me an update about basically how town government committees can do public meetings. So during the pandemic, we were all able to go online. Prior to the pandemic, we weren't able to do what we're doing now. And so the legislature passed legislation, the governor signed it, and it got extended, but the permission to do online meetings ends on July 15th. So next Friday.
This Friday.
I like that face, Nate. That was good. So in true form, apparently the state Senate passed something that would have extended the ability to do it if towns wanted to do it. And then the House did something really wacky, which is that they mandated hybrid meetings, which most towns, including Shutesbury, cannot do. Like that's, they just don't.
Michael, I don't know if that's absolutely correct.
That's what Grace said.
What I read was that they extended it. They extended the remote, the House, but they added some other provisions. So it didn't, and one of them was for hybrid, they provided the option of a hybrid meeting.
Well, what Grace said is, that would be common sense to have an option. I don't think that's what, I know Grace said that was not the case in either situation.
But what happened was it's been shunted off to a committee.
Right. Well, that's what I was going to say. So because the House and the Senate don't agree, it's gone to conference committee where they have to figure out and agree. The challenge is they have to come to agreement, and then each House and the Senate have to vote in affirmative by next Friday. And then the government has to sign it. So now sometimes they work very well under pressure, but that's a lot of pressure. So it doesn't mean anything for us immediately because we're not meeting in the next week or two, but it's all to say, we don't know what the future looks like in terms of our meetings. If they don't get their act together, any one meeting after July 15th might have to meet in person. And if they get their act together and agree to something, we don't know what they're agreeing to yet. So it's just the FYI that we're sort of on the cusp of maybe some change, but we don't know what. So Leslie, you're muted.
And the hybrid meeting means that some people are in person and some people are on Zoom?
Yeah, I mean, prior to the pandemic, you were allowed to, some members were allowed to remote in, but you couldn't do a truly hybrid. You had to have a primary presence in a physical space, and some people could call in. So that was different, and it was still hard for Shutesbury. I remember when I was on select board trying to accommodate that for one select board member, and it didn't work well. So our technology has improved in town, but basically, if there's a chance our next meeting could be in person, but who knows? That's sort of the short answer. So it's mostly just a heads up.
It's awful.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
So the last thing I wanted to just talk about is with my email exchange with Rita about the select board stuff. I sent the recommendations about the ARPA money spending, and what she said is that they did not discuss it because there was no dollars associated with it. And so I don't know how successful we were, but I thought we could carve out a little bit of time and just see if there was some way of coming up, with some kind of figures. So from what I understand from Rita said, after they put aside money for the school roof, there'll be $225,000 available for non-school roof purposes for the whole town for ARPA funds. So I can't imagine all of that's going to ECAC, but the things that we had recommended was establishing the climate response fund, which was just in the spreadsheet. Consultant fees for 4 different kinds of activities. Engineering study in regards to stormwater management on roads, assessment of community solar or municipally owned solar, update of the master plan, and then grant writing as opportunities emerge. And then the last thing was extend existing solar infrastructure. So building out more solar, whether it be behind town hall or in new places. So, I don't think we really have the tools or the research ability to quickly come up with this, especially for the solar infrastructure. I can't imagine. The climate response fund, we could put a best guess to that and maybe some of the consulting fees, but I thought I want to just put it out there. So it seems like if we want to have a chance of having them fund some of the stuff, we at least have to have a placeholder in that. So that's, and you want me to share my screen? Would that be helpful so you can focus on it? Let's see. Make it bigger. Oops. Can you see that okay?
Yep.
So, one of the things that I think the way we did it is you could subsume all the consulting fees in a climate response fund. So we could hypothetically say, put $100,000 into the climate response fund, and that could pay for a range of consulting services as well as some other stuff like buying chargers or whatever. Gail?
All the other projects that were submitted had definite dollar values with them, but they were not nearly at that. They were in the 1,000, 2,000, 2,500 category.
Oh, that's interesting. Who else submitted?
The library, broadband. That one got nixed because broadband is a business. They have no.
They make money.
Yeah, there's really no need for them to get town funding. the school roof, of course, was first. Forgotten now some others.
Was there a request for committees to make requests of this? I mean, I don't,
Yeah, Becky sent out an email to all of us.
geez, I missed that. When was that?
It's 3-4 weeks ago, maybe.
Yeah, 3 weeks before the meeting, probably.
And is it a June 7th? It's a done deal now? It's too late?
No, they didn't make a decision. They sort of ranked them. Like the broadband was a no way. Such and such was put on a not important, drop it to the bottom of the list kind of thing. Some question about the libraries because they were asking about funding for the site mitigation, et cetera, what that involved.
Are there certain requirements for how the money can be spent?
No.
I'm sure there's requirements through ARPA in the state, but you know.
I think the thrust of it was to get our request with real dollars into the tablet because so the state can't claw it back.
I see.
So quick get our requests in there for real. I would propose getting some kind of round dollar figures, but some way to justify them.
Mhm.
And I don't know how you're going to do that with grant writing and consultants and such.
Well, if we walk through the number 2 ones, I mean, Miriam, you're the one who suggested the engineering study. Do you have any sense of what a cost might be?
Could be 50,000.
That could be a real one. And that particular study, the stormwater management, is on a number of gotta get to lists around town.
It's
so.
really, it's so critical.
Yeah.
I can't emphasize this enough, the headaches and the stress that people are experiencing because roads, we don't have a plan, or we don't even have a plan to get a plan for fixing the roads.
Right.
And especially if you're on some of these side roads and dirt roads, or if you're when you're wetlands, it's just a mess.
So if we had just for this conversation, at least at the moment, if we have 50,000 for the engineering study, if we were to.
The problem is, I'm just throwing that number out, but
I know.
be more, right? So.
Well, what I'm thinking about is if we could walk through the engineering, the assessment, the update of the master plan and grant rating and see what kind of number, all of them are fungible.
Yep.
And then you could put those under a climate response fund, so depending on, so it could be 100,000, it could be more. It sounds like from what Gail, you're saying is if they've got 225,000, they got a lot of money left over that no one's claiming yet.
There are
So,
a lot of folks claiming, yeah.
but little amounts. Right.
Well, but by the time you add them all up, they went well over the 225 by.
Oh, they did.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would suggest, for instance, that the assessment of community solar be part of what we come up with as a grant application through green communities.
Mm-hmm.
Not on the ARPA money, but on a specific, and we'll know more, of course, after the audit. Then we could have specifics and dollar values to go with that.
Do you know, well, on that one, if they're auditing the buildings, is it just about the efficiency of those buildings? Because you could have, community solar sited at a municipal location, but not necessarily supporting that particular building. Like
Right.
It could be.
And we could ask the auditors to consider that when they go through. What is the, how amenable is this particular structure to added solar? So the school, for instance, is not a good one because of the shade. But there might be more places certainly behind the new library. And there might be more areas behind town hall or the fire department to add more ground-based, ground toasted solar.
So do you think the audit, I mean, is the audit just a starting point and then we would need to hire a consultant? Like, you know, if we reached out to Mary Ann at, you know, Co-op Power, Leslie, I don't know if you have a sense of like, would we have to pay her to sort of do that proposal development? Or is that something that would be part and parcel of the partnership?
Well, and I'm not sure that that's in her tool house.
Yeah.
My understanding is that if we had a letter of intent from the town, that would be enough for Co-op Power to start the ball looking for funding. So
But a letter of intent for what?
that we're interested in pursuing community solar in this location or that location, or, you know, in a letter of intent, so that if we did start to work with community solar, we were committed to working with them. Like, we didn't just have them give us all this information and then hire someone else to work with. You know, they would help us get funding if we had a letter of intent saying we want to work with them.
Okay, so in terms of, for this purposes, I think we don't have to go down that path, because either we'll come up with something that we're identified and we're interested in working with them, or the audit would be sufficient. So it sounds like we don't need to pay necessarily a consultant to do an assessment, which is something I've always thought we probably needed to do.
Well, I wouldn't rule it out. You know, if there's money for it, then that makes things easier. If we were to work with Co-op Power, they don't have to start reinventing the wheel. If we said we were on it and we have some money to help them with the research.
Yeah,
It's a conversation with Mary Ann, and I'm happy to follow up with her.
okay. I'm just trying to figure out how to secure some money with the select board, knowing that we don't have any hard figures. But it seems like this, you know, ARPA funding is not coming back. So this is sort of
Right.
one
Grab it
time,
now.
yeah.
But what
And-
if we were to say, Michael, that we were recommending $100,000 that would go toward road, stormwater engineering, or in the absence of that, or if it comes out to be less than 100,000 for road repairs? Because one of the other issues we have is that we're perennially running out of money for road repairs.
And it's that, well,
And also snow plowing.
yeah,
I
And
mean,
also,
I'd like the highway department to ask for that, as opposed to ECAC to do it.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I think if we ask for $100,000 to say, you know, top of the list would be an engineering study, depending on other money to be available. I mean, I think grant writing makes sense. And
there
I
are
don't know.
other around stormwater stuff. For example, I think it's the Safe Streets program has a component of doing surveys of roads and culvert surveys, which has been like a thing
Yeah.
that the town has never done. We don't.
Well, that's the compelling part about putting grant writing in, is that if we get grant writing, you're creating the capacity to actually go after other money. So you're leveraging it.
wasn't there an engineering study done, 10, 12 years ago around Lake Wyola?
Yes,
And they made certain recommendations, but nothing ever happened, right?
that's right.
Um,
Been sitting there. Now they're applying for some FERCog grant money to do another engineering study.
They, LWAC,
LWAC and LWA.
so this would be duplicating that effort?
They're saying that effort was too vague and non-specific and they need
I
something
see.
more actionable. I don't know that that's really true.
And it's only Lake Wyola that they would be asking for.
And they would only, though I think actually they were talking about maybe the grant might be broader than just Lake Wyola. Or no, I think it was to look at both sides of Lake Wyola, whereas the original engineering study was only looking at
Oh,
the,
The
one-
bowl.
the bowl.
Yeah.
So Nate, Zoe, do you guys have any thoughts about how to approach this, since we could get money if we position this well?
I don't have well-formed thoughts.
That's because you got bubbles on your short.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, I mean, it sounded like the select board is interested in, a fairly concrete proposal, and I'm just wondering how a climate fund proposal will be received, since it kind of sounds like sort of kicking the can down the road, if you will, in terms of like being specific. But again, like I'm not 100% sure. It would be great to build out, have funding to build something. I mean, I love proposal 3, extending existing solar. And I just don't know if the timing aligns. It seems like you would need to solicit a study for that, and in order to generate something concrete to propose.
So you have any thoughts?
My only thought is to find an engineer to give more specific words to here's what I would do with this money, because
Excellent.
they're just looking for more specific, so we could just try to find somebody to give us those.
It's a tight timeline. I don't know if Miriam, you have any? Have you run across people?
I'm
I
sorry,
mean,
what?
It seems like a short time turnaround to sort of identify someone. Have you run across anything that's in writing that sort of grounds out the 50,000? Or is that just your sense?
No, I pulled that just out of the air, and I would say 100,000. Because engineering can be really expensive, and let's say you get an engineering study and then you want to write some grants. $100,000 might give you the capacity to write grants to then implement the engineering study. So I would say 100,000.
Yeah.
I think Zoe's got a good point, though. Get some specific, I know what I'm looking at kind of language to make a specific proposal.
Uh-huh.
And if we could go to an engineer, maybe even a prior one, what would it take to do this study? Give us a ballpark and language to justify it. I mean, that could be a conversation. It doesn't need to be a long drawn out. If we can get our hands on that engineer.
Yeah, I think that's what I was asking Miriam, without being articulate. Given your focus on this stuff, is there anyone that you're aware of, like, who's the people who did Wheelock, that consulting company?
Time bond.
Yeah.
Could they give us an estimate?
I could,
The
if I
capacity?
can ask, I'll tell you what. I could ask my daughter if she knows anybody at GZA that I could talk to.
Okay, that's another firm.
My daughter's a civil engineer who works at
Oh, there you
GZA,
go.
but this is not her thing. She's another part of civil engineering. There's apparently 25,000 different kinds of civil engineering. None of them know what the other ones do, apparently.
But I would marry Nate's point and Zoe's that the establish a climate resource fund is too broad and too vague. If we had, in our heads, that's the umbrella, but have some very specific 1 or 2 projects, each with a $1 justifiable cost and a short explanation of what it would entail.
So can I throw just on that, if I can try out an idea, because I think someone who is skeptical can say a climate response fund is just a slush fund. you know, like
Yeah.
there's no accountability.
Cash.
But on the other hand, we're at the beginning steps of this road and we don't know what's going to happen. And we want to be able to have the resources to do something when we get there. So I don't think it's unreasonable. It's just a matter of how you present it. So it's not like, because we can't spend the money without the town approving it. It's
Right.
just sort of holding, it's sort of a holding spot that gives us the ability to act. Otherwise, we're going to come with a really nice list of things to do and we'll have no money. And someone will say, well, go through the annual budgeting process and town meeting will approve it. And, you know, that's going to add 6 months to 12 months and a lot of headache.
So use that as the title. And then, you know, as you say, some of the following items could be funded out of this fund, then specific targets within that broad title.
Okay.
That just seems, then you get both the
I'll-
critic and the,
Yeah, so I'll try to massage this a little bit. Miriam, if you can throw me some language if you get it.
I'll try.
Yeah, and I'll just let Rita know that we're gonna attempt to submit something to hang our hat on. Wobbly as it might be, but it seems, you know, the one thing I'd say, if we don't get money, we should actually think about how we would get money in the budget, because we probably have to start that in September and talk to the select board about, you know, going to the FinCom and all that kind of stuff. And then we would have to do, I think we'd have to do more homework if it's town money as opposed to ARPA money. Because ARPA money is, well, the taxpayers are indirectly paying for it. It's not as upfront and personal. Well, that was helpful. And I think the only other thing I was gonna just check in on before we go is so it's obviously summer. We're obviously doing stuff. Do we want to keep meeting on a 3-week cycle? Are people good with that? Or do you want to sort of like take a bit of a breather and extend things for the summer and try to regroup? Either way is fine, but I thought I would take the pulse. So if we did every 3 weeks, I looked at, we've been meeting August 2nd, August 23rd, and then September 13th. So we can do some of those, all of those, we can spread it out differently. It's within our control. Any strong feelings?
Those dates work for me.
Okay. Well, why don't we plan on August 2nd? We'll just plan on them. And if people are on vacation or it's feeling like it's a bit much, does that seem like it's okay with everybody?
and if there's nothing on the agenda, you'll say there's nothing for the agenda, we'll skip this meeting.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so for next meeting, we'll have whatever report comes out of the select board meeting. And if Henry's up for doing a longer presentation about, or an additional, I guess, I don't know if it has to be longer, but an additional presentation. And then we can talk about the liaison concept to the various committees. So we got 3 things. So I think there's enough, and we don't have to have long meetings. If we're meeting for an hour and we get through the agenda, that's sufficient.
And you'll have a report from the select board about CCA.
Yeah, exactly. So we will know something. So Gail, you are up next month for minute taking.
Okay,
And unlike last time, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn and we can actually vote to adjourn.
To adjourn, I move to adjourn.
A second?
whole bunch of seconds.
Okay, so all in favor, Miriam,
Aye.
Gail,
Aye.
Zoe,
Aye.
Leslie,
Aye.
Nate,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. Okay, we're officially adjourned. We did it by the book this time. Okay, thank you, guys. And Nate, we should talk just in terms of the select board thing. So once we know what time it is, we can check in.
Sounds good.
Okay, see ya.
Aye.